Well, the man accused of going on a murderous rampage inside a newspaper newsroom will face a judge this morning. And today, the survivors of the attack in Annapolis are defiant. Just hours after the attack, the newspaper staff published its morning paper. Today's opinion page is mostly blank. It includes a tribute to the 5 victims who lost their lives. Survivors of the attack continued working on today's edition while they waited for updates on their colleagues. The victims included 4 journalists and a sales assistant, ranging in age from 34 to 65 years old. It is one of the deadliest attacks on journalists in U.S. history. The shooting began just after 3 p.m. yesterday when the suspect burst into the Capitol Gazette's newsroom armed with a shotgun, smoke bombs, and flash grenades. Police tell CBS News they believe the suspect acted alone. Police say 38-year-old Jared Ramos had threatened the newspaper in the past and did so again just a few hours before the shooting. He's charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. Nora O'Donnell has more from Annapolis.
Several shots have been fired, at least 10 shots heard.
Just before 3 p.m., the gunman entered Building 888 carrying smoke bombs, flash grenades, a shotgun, and headed straight for the Gazette newsroom.
This person was prepared today to come in. This person was prepared to shoot people. His intent was to cause harm.
Employees hid under their desks while the shooter's bullets pierced the glass front door. Some said they could hear screams as their friends fell around them.
The door of the Capitol Gazette had been blown to pieces. It was in shattered pieces all on the carpet. And this guy was moving across the entrance of the Capitol Gazette office, pointing the gun deeper into the office, like he was targeting people.
All 5 victims were gunned down on the building's first floor. A Gazette reporter, Phil Davis, described the frightening scene as a war zone and said there is nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk and then hear the gunman reload. Police arrived to the office in about 60 seconds to confront the shooter. In that time, they evacuated 170 people from the building who exited with their hands raised high in the air.
Suspect in custody, the main office.
Authorities quickly surrounded the shooter and arrested him without exchanging gunfire. Law enforcement sources tell CBS News the shooter was hiding under a desk and had damaged his fingertips to make it harder for police to identify him with fingerprints. But federal authorities later used facial recognition technology to determine just who he was. Police then searched his home for any clues.
It's a lot of moving parts. Our primary job right now is to make sure that we get enough evidence to make sure that we can prosecute this case.
CBS This Morning co-host Nora O'Donnell joins me now from Annapolis, Maryland. So, Nora, you have been on the ground in Annapolis. You've been speaking to witnesses. You've been speaking to officials. What more have you learned about this case?
Well, number one, we've learned about the resilience of the journalists at the Capitol Gazette, which is one of the oldest papers in America. This has been the deadliest attack against journalists in U.S. history, and this morning they went ahead and published a paper. Even though there's about 30 members of the staff and 5 of them were killed yesterday, they were able to publish this paper this morning. And when I got up very early this morning and saw the opinion page and saw that it blanked, I have to tell you, I did tear up because it says, "Today we are speechless." This page is intentionally left blank today to commemorate the victims of Thursday's shooting in our office. And so this has affected not only the people who work at the Capitol Gazette, but also here in Anne Arundel County and Annapolis, which is a resort town where people live and work, but also a close community, and wondering how did this happen? As the police chief said to me this morning, they still have a lot of questions.
Oh, I can only imagine. I want to talk more right now, though, at least, about the victims. They were all journalists?
They were all working at this newspaper and journalists. 4 of them were editors. In fact, one of the other reporters said on television last night he believes that they were targeted because they were editors of this newspaper. Gerald Fishman, he was the Capitol's editorial page editor, and his coworkers called him sort of quiet and brilliant. Rob Hyacin, he was the assistant managing editor and a columnist. He loved to mentor young journalists. He also just celebrated his 33rd wedding anniversary with his wife last month. reporter John McNamara. He had a passion for sports. A lot of people knew him because he covered sports not only at the University of Maryland, but certainly, the Washington Nationals, but had been a fixture in this community for a long time. Wendy Winters, she was a mother of 4, a Navy mom, a Girl Scout leader, and then Rebecca Smith, who had just started working at the newspaper. She was a sales assistant there, also a mom. And so this paper is still grieving for these 5 journalists who were killed. And it's not known, and it doesn't appear that they had any relationship with the suspect. But according to law enforcement officials, the suspect had a long-running grievance against this newspaper. Why? Because way back in 2011, Jared Ramos had been threatening a girl he was interested on Facebook. It went to court. He got a misdemeanor charge, and then the paper wrote a story about, hey, here's someone who wants to be a friend. They wrote a profile sort of piece on this kind of a harassment story. Well, he called that harassment. He tried to sue for defamation, and it was ultimately tossed out. And that led to this grievance, this long-standing grievance he had against the Capital Gazette. He had even threatened the former reporter, the columnist who wrote that story. He had threatened the former editor, a guy by the name of Tom Marquette, even saying he wanted Tom Marquette dead. And yet the police could not pursue those sort of threats. And so now we're here years later. And so I think the questions, as the police chief said to me, what finally set the suspect off? What caused him a year ago to go buy this shotgun, and what led him here yesterday to take the lives of 5 journalists?
Yeah, what was the trigger? Because obviously his resentment and his anger had been simmering for a while, and he had been pretty open about it if he was posting his complaints on social media. So is that sort of the focus for law enforcement now, figuring out a motive, or are they also sort of looking at other things as well?
Yeah, I think that is. And, it's interesting. Mary Ellen O'Toole is an FBI profiler, worked for the FBI for many years. She's really one of the best in this business. And as I asked her about the very same thing you asked me, she said to me that clearly the suspect is what they call an injustice collector. And so in his mind, he has been collecting all these injustices, that the woman rejected him way back when, that a paper wrote about it, that he got a misdemeanor charge about it, that the judge then rebuked him and saying clearly he hasn't learned his lessons. Who knows what's happened along his employment career or his reputation, because his name was made public in court documents and in the paper, and that this injustice collector, then that all builds up inside of him, and that something must have set him off. Was it the words of a politician? Was it something else that happened? And that's just really what people will sort of study. What's interesting to me, Anne-Marie, is that, he had a pump-action shotgun, and not on a lot of these mass shootings that we see, you normally have a semi-automatic weapon. The question is, his choice of weaponry, did he buy it? Did he buy it legally? Those are still things that law enforcement is going to answer questions on.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking to Mary Ellen about, her take on this type of person that would do something like this. Nora O'Donnell, thank you very much.
Thank you.